breaking news we're following now. Attorneys for Donald Trump claim prosecutors in Manhattan are trying to expand the gag order in this hush money case. Let's bring in CNN's Kara Scannell. She's got details for us. What can you tell us, Kara?
Yeah, so Donald Trump's attorneys have just written to the judge saying that they think that the prosecutors are trying to expand on the gag order that was put in place earlier this week. The judge said that Trump couldn't make comments about the potential witnesses in this case, the jury, court staff members, members of the prosecution team, and their family members. But he specifically said that it would not apply to the district attorney, Alvin Bragg. So the prosecutor's office pointing out to the judge that the day after that gag order was put in place, Donald Trump made statements about the judge and his daughter, and they asked the court to clarify if this gag order applies to the judge's family members, the family members of the district attorney, or family members of anyone else associated in this case, including some of the witnesses or potential witnesses here. Trump's attorneys are responding to that, saying that this appears to be an expansion or a request to expand the gag order. They're saying that Trump has interpreted the way that a lot of people have in the legal community, that it doesn't apply to the judge or his daughter. And if the judge is going to consider that, they want to be able to file legal briefs to argue against it. So it's now before the judge, but, the prosecutors immediately reacting to Trump's Truth Social statements, where he was making statements about the judge's family members, and they're asking the court for some clarity. But Trump's team thinking that that is an overreach and an effort to expand this gag order, Wolf.
All right, Kara Scannell reporting for us. Thank you very much. I want to bring in our legal and political experts for some analysis right now. Norm Eisen, what could this suggest to you that prosecutors are asking whether this gag order covers the judge's family?
Well, we've seen Trump, in a way that appears to be very intentional, target Judge Merchan's daughter, including by name, in a series of social media postings. And we know from his prior isolation of individuals in this fashion that can create an enhanced risk profile. Now, the language of the gag order here talks about the family members of counsel or court staff. There is an ambiguity whether that encompasses the judge's daughter. I think the DA is right to ask for clarification. And let's not let the quibbling about the words of the existing order detract from how incredibly inappropriate and dangerous it is to single out the adult child of a judge in this fashion.
Important point. Kristen Holmes, you've done a lot of reporting on this. A federal judge, as you know, gave a very rare and extraordinary interview to CNN's Caitlin Collins about the threats to judges. And that interview was last night. Watch this little excerpt.
It's very disconcerting to have someone making comments about a judge, and it's particularly problematic when those comments are in the form of a threat, especially if they're directed at one's family. I mean, we do these jobs because we're committed to the rule of law and we believe in the rule of law, and the rule of law can only function effectively when we have judges who are prepared to carry out their duties without the threat of potential physical harm.
Very strong words. Is there a recognition, Caitlin, from the Trump team about the potential impact of his rhetoric?
Well, the way that the Trump team is phrasing it in this response that they've provided to the court is they're defending him. And they're saying that the gag order, it wasn't about the court, that that's not how Donald Trump would have interpreted it. And they're also saying that what he is doing, attacking the judge's daughter by name, pointing out that she has worked for Democratic political campaigns, they're saying essentially that that is campaign speech, and so it should be protected. This is an argument that they have to make here because it's a bit different than in his other cases. In his other cases, there is a case where he has a gag order that's been upheld by the federal appellate court in Washington, D.C. This is another criminal case. And in that case, it also says court staff and families should not be commented on, and he has not tried to go there in that direction. He has not commented since that gag order was put in place about that judge or her staff. And so when you look at these gag orders and the way they've been structured, they're in rungs. witnesses get the most amount of protection, and then people who work on these cases, whether it's line prosecutors, people from the FBI, investigators whose names we wouldn't know in the public, or court staff and their families, that's the next rung of protection. And then the public officials are treated a bit differently because their names are out there. And so this clarification request, Trump's team says, this shouldn't have been about the judge. We don't believe it's about the judge, but there is still an open question of does the court order, should have it even applied to the families to begin with? It seems quite clear that protecting families and people whose names are not in the public spotlight is something that was intentional behind the gag order when Judge Merchan put it on this case.
Well, let me get Kristen into this. Kristen, is there a recognition from the Trump team about the potential impact of his rhetoric, especially given what we heard from the judge last night?
No, there isn't. We haven't heard any kind of feedback on that. And in fact, Donald Trump has often leaned into this attacking judges, attacking prosecutors, attacking lawyers as all part of a larger strategy, which he has taken to really play this out in the court of public opinion, saying that they are all Democrats, that they are intentionally putting him through this process because it's political persecution. One thing I want to add to what Caitlin was saying about why the lawyers would come forward and push back on this is because one of the things that we have learned is that Donald Trump is not posting to social media when it comes to these legal cases in a vacuum. And in fact, his lawyers have briefed them multiple times in these cases where there is a gag order on what exactly he can say, telling him exactly how far he can go up to the line without crossing it. Likely in this case, he would have been briefed that he is not to go after the same long list here, the attorneys, the court staff, the families of attorneys and court staff, but not been briefed anything on the judge. So then we're seeing his legal team pushing back. And in fact, in some cases, his legal team has actually gone through his social media posts before he has put them up. But just to go back to this idea that Donald Trump is putting this on social media, does anyone essentially defend him or push back against this idea that he should be saying these kind of things online, anyone close to him? The answer is no. I mean, a lot of this is playing into his conservative base. Some of this, actually, what he was accusing the judge's daughter of was stuff that came from a far-right conservative social media post. So that is where he gets his information much of the time, and that's also where he is repeating it to, a sort of echo chamber, as he does try to whip up voters and supporters and surround him in these legal cases.
Yeah, good point. Norm, should the Trump team be worried about the potential impact if he is found to have violated this gag order?
Well, I think given the ambiguity in the wording of the gag order, it's unlikely that he will be have found to have violated it. The more immediate question is the judge going to expand the gag order? Some of these statements that Trump has made about the judge's daughter, Lauren, have been false. It has been disinformation. Things that she did not actually say about him. And the pattern reminds me of his goading of Judge Engoron. There, he didn't attack the judge's daughter. This is the judge in the civil fraud case. He persistently attacked the judge's female clerk who was assisting him during the trial. That suggests that Donald Trump is very intentionally finding ways that he can provoke these judges, seeing how far he can go. And now the judge will likely push back.